Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, the Hormuz Gambit. Who will control the strategic strait as the efforts to reach a deal with Iran continue? And the Israel divide. Why are some Democrats backing away from Israel? Plus, the evangelical factor. Lance Wallnau explains what's really driving President Trump's support for Israel. And mystery beneath the city. A small discovery with a big story about biblical Jerusalem. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell.
And I'm Joshua Swanson.
Joshua, great to see you back. We missed you.
Thank you, Chris. It's really good to be back. Israeli officials are concerned the U.S. might be too eager to make a deal with Iran. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned that his country is ready to go it alone to prevent Iran from gaining a nuclear weapon.
Meanwhile, the parties have nearly finalized stage one of the deal to open the Strait of Hormuz. Here's the latest on these and other stories.
Iran and Oman have agreed on the parameters for a temporary 60-day shipping corridor through the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian deputy foreign minister says negotiations are nearly complete.
We have made significant progress in our discussion with Oman, and this progress is on the verge of being finalized.
Under the proposal, inbound vessels would coordinate with Iran, while outbound traffic would be managed by Oman. Iran says the strait will not fully reopen until the United States lifts its naval blockade and ends attacks on Iranian ports. President Trump says a deal could come at any moment, calling it Iran's last chance. But there are reports Israeli officials are concerned Washington is pursuing an agreement at almost any cost. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu signaled Wednesday that Israel is prepared to act alone after a post by Israeli media reported that Iran's Revolutionary Guard's commander admitted they're pursuing a nuclear weapon.
Today we heard the commander of the Revolutionary Guards explicitly declare Iran's intention to continue developing nuclear weapons. Well, I'm also determined to continue preventing Iran from possessing nuclear weapons.
Meanwhile, another front is heating up in the Red Sea.
The Yemeni armed forces were able to target the Saudi oil tanker Wafa in the northern Red Sea, off the coast of Yanbu, with a number of ballistic missiles.
This is the 8th vessel targeted by the Houthis since the blockade began on July 22nd. Meanwhile, in Rome, Israel-Lebanon peace talks were cut short as the IDF launched precision strikes against Hezbollah targets, citing a ceasefire violation. Overnight, Israel also announced 2 soldiers were killed and 4 seriously wounded during operations in southern Lebanon. Back in the United States, progressive Abdul El Sayed won Michigan's Democratic Senate primary, a victory many see as another sign of the Democratic Party's growing shift toward the pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel movement. President Trump had this to say in a speech in Las Vegas last night.
He doesn't love Israel. He doesn't love Jewish people. He hates them.
El Sayed has criticized Israel's military action in Gaza and wants to cut off U.S. military aid to the Jewish state. Joshua Swanson, CBN News, Jerusalem.
After several missed deadlines, the president insists a deal is still close as negotiators work through what appears to be deep divisions inside the Iranian regime.
There are people within their system who want the war to be over. There are also people within their system who are crazy radicals who want the war to continue. Our job is to navigate through that and get the best outcome for the American people.
Trump is framing the negotiations as Iran's last chance to avoid military action, which he compared to a World War II type strike.
I'd rather make a deal because I don't want to kill people. I do not want to kill people. But at some point we're going to We were set for the biggest attack of any attack, and we've hit them very hard for the last few months.
As the White House waits for a response, concerns are growing over what any agreement could mean for shipping through the Strait of Hormuz and whether Iran could gain greater influence over the world's most important energy choke points. Recent reports suggest that issue remains one of the toughest obstacles. At the same time, the war of words is escalating. Iranian officials have mocked Trump's optimism about a breakthrough. One Iranian official calls Trump's actions theater diplomacy on loop. The president also responded to reports claiming the U.S. military is running low on munitions.
We have certain types of munitions that are very powerful, that we have virtual unlimited supply. We have others where it's a little bit tighter, and we're getting them in on a daily basis.
Trump also posted on Truth Social the reports were fake news, promising the leakers will be hunted down and jailed. All this comes as new reports that Iraqi militias and the Houthis may be preparing an attack against Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states. A reminder that Iranian proxies still have the ability to expand the conflict. Adding another layer of uncertainty, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan signed a joint defense agreement. The so-called Islamic NATO could reshape the regional security landscape for years to come. Meanwhile, the United Nations is expressing growing concern over reports of executions inside Iran as the regime continues its crackdown on dissent. Amid the geopolitical maneuvering, some evangelical leaders are urging Christians to view the crisis through a spiritual lens. Author and speaker Lance Wallnau attended Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent meeting with evangelical leaders in Washington, D.C.
I'm a Christian, right? So I believe we have to surround this whole process in prayer.
During the meeting, Wallnau says he spoke directly with Netanyahu about what he sees as the deeper connection between America and Israel.
I told him, I said, we're in a third great awakening. This may sound like strange language, but Israel's connected to the United States by the DNA of destiny, that we are tied together. Even our histories are kind of unique in terms of our Christian map of our high points and low points have also always corresponded with Israel's paroxysms and agenda. So I think he doesn't blink. I mean, what's interesting, you could talk to him about we're spiritually in a battle.
A spiritual battle that appears to be heating up while diplomacy lingers. Paul Petit, CBN News, Jerusalem.
You know, Joshua, I think this Islamic NATO may be one of the biggest geopolitical shifts in recent memory, and just it could be huge news and have a great impact. And here's what our friend Jonathan Conricus with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies had to say about this latest development.
I think it's a worrying sign. 3 countries that allegedly are aligned with the US but are breaking out and deciding to form a separate military strategic alliance. For me, it makes me question their loyalty towards the United States of America, and I wonder why Turkey, a significant and lauded NATO member, needs to be in yet another military alliance. I'm not aware of any other NATO country that has a dual membership in significant security alliances, and I think that's another question mark in the loyalty of Turkey towards the US and the alliance, and definitely should cause questions about whether or not to supply the Turks with advanced American weaponry.
You know, Joshua, this seems like an ominous development for Israel. 2 out of these 3 members are very hostile, Turkey and Pakistan, to Israel.
That's right. And Turkey, of course, is the second largest standing army in NATO.
In NATO, exactly, yeah.
Pakistan, the only Muslim country with nuclear weapons. And Saudi Arabia is the only Muslim country in the G20. It's the largest economy in the Muslim world.
Yeah.
So to have this alliance, to have these 3 powerhouses with nuclear weapons, with the largest standing army and all that money, and we know, as you just said, 2 out of the 3 are anti-Israel. What is that going to mean for the future relationship with Israel?
And there's a possibility, at least reports out there, that maybe Egypt is going to join this as well. And when you have Turkey that really has been, its rhetoric by Erdogan against Prime Minister Netanyahu, against Israel itself, the foreign minister said that Israel was a burden on humanity. So this is a very hostile country. And if they have an Islamic NATO, which means basically that if one nation is attacked, that means the other nations have to attack, just like it says in Article 5 of the NATO alliance.
Yeah, we're talking about intelligence sharing, joint military exercises, defense their defense cooperating, their industrialization of their defense. It's a big deal. And to your point, deterrence, or will this be offense?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, and we see right now, so many things have changed since October 7th. It seems like there's continuing chess places in the Middle East that keep changing. For example, Syria, not in December 2024, it fell after years of the Assad regime. So things are changing dynamically here in the Middle East.
Yeah, that's right. It's also interesting too. The U.S. almost sold F-35s to Turkey, but then pulled back.
Right.
What is this going to mean for U.S. relations with Turkey in terms of the weaponry that we sell them? Right. So many questions. We'll have to see how it unfolds.
Right. Coming up next, the Israel vote. Could the midterms reshape U.S. support for Israel? Dale Hurd explores. The 2026 midterm elections could have a negative impact on U.S. support for Israel. The anti-Israel wing of the Democratic Party is pushing to drop assistance for the Jewish state.
Their tactics are becoming more confrontational and sometimes violent. CBN's senior correspondent Dale Hurd has the story.
Across America, anti-Israel activists have been disrupting congressional town halls and shouting down Democrat lawmakers.
If you cannot behave respectably, then leave.
How many more innocent Palestinian civilians will you allow to be killed by Israel?
Can we talk? Israel was attacked by an openly genocidal terrorist group.
Washington State Democrat Congressman Adam Smith has seen his home vandalized and a fire set in his driveway by anti-Israel activists. A staff member was also physically assaulted at a town hall. Smith says he's given up trying to hold in-person town halls because they're continually disrupted by anti-Israel demonstrators.
I have been unable to hold a town hall meeting for a year because a bunch of leftists show up and scream at me and don't let anyone else speak. You talk about illiberal, okay, having people stand out in front of my house, screaming death threats at me and threatening my wife.
A longtime supporter of Israel, Smith joined more than 100 other Democrats last month to vote for the Massey Amendment that would cut off military aid to the Jewish state. Although the amendment failed, it still caused a political earthquake, showing how far support for Israel has dropped among Democrats in Congress.
The more victories the anti-Israel types have, the more the regular Democrats are afraid, and the more they're afraid, the less likely they are to be pro-Israel.
Adam Turner, Deputy Director of Government Relations for the Zionist Organization of America and a former Senate staffer on Capitol Hill, says for the first time some Democrat lawmakers refuse to even meet with members of his organization.
Which is sort of shocking. I mean, I used to work on the Hill, Senator Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania, and we were told that, when a constituent comes in, no matter where that person is on the issues, you treat them with respect, you bring them in, you listen to their concerns, and they wouldn't even meet with some of these people. So it's a real problem.
Among pro-Israel Democrats, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's home has been firebombed. Representative Jared Moskowitz of Florida has received threatening voicemails targeting himself and his family. And Representative Josh Gottheimer says the FBI told him it disrupted a potential large-scale attack on pro-Israel members of Congress. How much of the threats and intimidation played a part in causing Democratic lawmakers to drop their support for Israel? While it's impossible to know for sure, the numbers show a big change. In 2024, only 17% of House Democrats voted against aid to Israel. This year, the number voting against the financing package grew to nearly half. Democrat Senator John Fetterman has consistently criticized the party for becoming more anti-Israel. Michigan U.S. Senate candidate Abdul El Sayed, who opposes helping Israel, won Michigan's Democratic primary Tuesday, despite suggesting in a call to donors that Fetterman should be defeated, referring to him as an ogre whose head should be put on a pike.
Ideally, you put one ogre on a pike, and then everyone else gets the message.
Democratic leaders have yet to condemn the speech given by Hassan Piker to the College Democrats of America National Convention last month. Piker called for ousting Democrats who support Israel. He's also said the U.S. deserved 9/11, that he backs Hamas over Israel, and has called Israeli and Orthodox Jews inbred and psychopath.
I'm not saying that everyone who's critical of Israel is an anti-Semite, but it's certainly a big part of the drive there.
David Harsanyi, senior writer at the Washington Examiner, says moderate Democrats are allowing the party to be pulled away from support for Israel
because that's where the energy is within the activist class of that party. And for me, at least, I mean, where you stand on Israel, and again, I'm not saying Israel does everything perfect, to me is a kind of a moral IQ test. If you're defending Hamas, if you're with the Iranian regime, if you're flying a Palestinian flag in a protest, I'm almost certain that you hate America as well.
By one estimate, only about a third of American Jews vote Republican. That number could potentially see a dramatic increase if hostility to Israel within the Democrat Party and threats to lawmakers continue. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
When we come back, is the media misreading President Trump's relationship with Israel? Insights from Lance Wallnau. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu recently visited the United States, where, among other things, he also met with President Trump and some evangelical leaders.
Our Middle East correspondent Paul Petit spoke with Lance Wallnau, the CEO of Lance Learning Group, who was also present. Here's part of their conversation. You can also watch the extended version on our YouTube channel.
So how do you feel by listening to the Prime Minister? How do you think he feels about the Christian evangelical community in the United States, and is it genuine?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that he's a pragmatist. And in the same way that Donald Trump knew, more so than any other of the Republican candidates, that this group of Christian evangelicals represents politically a far more substantial influence block than just someone to do a photo op with. Trump actually invited us to have a seat at the table, and he was rewarded by getting 40% of his vote basically as an evangelical constituency. Think about that. It's a pretty solid block. That's a huge group. Netanyahu said he has no doubt that it's that group, that category of people that is the most important ally Israel has, along with the United States, in the United States.
What did the Prime Minister say that perhaps resonated with you the most?
One of the interesting things he said that's a kind of a bit of a scoop is he said he's on his way to New York for the UN. He said, no doubt there's going to be organized by the left protests of hatred against Israel. He said he's hoping that there'll be some form of vigorous support that will be also at the United Nations, and that he won't end up having to be there on his own facing, battles on the outside on the streets and then the ideological battle inside the chamber.
A lot of people speculate as to the relationship now between Trump and Netanyahu, with these on again, off again, with the strikes and whatnot. Do you feel there's a strain which we've been hearing about in the media?
My only concern there is what voices are getting into the president's head. He doesn't like the idea that he gets beat up on for as though he's doing this for any reason that involves Israel twisting his arm and committing him, and that I think that feeds into some of the narrative that you and I see in the media at times, where he seems to go and take a kind of like, I won't say a swipe at because he's smarter than that, but where he pushes back on Israel a bit, because it's a strange thing, but the left know that if they can agitate him with that subject, that maybe he'll disengage completely from his agenda regarding Israel and the Middle East. But it's not going to work that way. So my answer for that is, I think there are always voices that we have to. I'm a Christian, right? So I believe we have to surround this whole process in prayer, because there's a big voice box over there, and he could be getting voices coming to his ear, looking at the New York Times, and it actually bothers him. But I think overall, his relationship with Netanyahu is so strategically strong, it's unbreakable.
Now, Lance, I do want to ask you, you came out early. You were the first calling Trump a modern-day Cyrus for his relationship with Israel. Are you still sensing that same relationship, despite those voices that you mentioned that may be getting in Trump's head?
Even more so. I mean, listen, if he had opposition then, it's even greater now because his impact is consolidating. Look, he's restructuring the Middle East. If America had the ability, the guts, to commit to what the price is in order to overthrow the regime, meaning we went in there, we had troops, we had soldiers, a coalition like we had in Kuwait. If we only had the capacity to do that, my gosh, 90 million Iranians would be free. We would be able to have a different flow of energy and peace in the Middle East. We'd have a decade before the anarchy could kind of start to spring up again, and weak leadership of the United States, could be tolerated. But we don't have that will. So it's so he still is the historic Cyrus that has reshaped the globe. And I'm counting on the fact that in the next 2 years, the midterms are going to be a big deal. People don't follow this close enough. But if he gets kneecapped come November, well, then let's have a conversation then, and I'll tell you what Cyrus looks like on the back end of his historic moment. But if we win the midterms, 90% of the times we'll lose. But if we win the midterms, then I think Trump has a chance to end the most historic presidency in the history of the United States.
Still ahead, secrets beneath Jerusalem. An extraordinary First Temple discovery sheds light on an ancient mystery.
For the first time, archaeologists have uncovered a figurine face mold in Jerusalem from more than 2,500 years ago.
Although figurines are commonly found in excavations, their function remains a mystery. Our correspondent Julie Stahl brings us the story.
Discovered deep in the Tower of David Museum at the end of the Kishle, or prison, the mold dates back to the First Temple period.
Actually, it's very exciting because as an archaeologist, you are dealing with stones, you are dealing with ceramic, and suddenly you see face. Suddenly you touch humanity. Suddenly you start to see belief. People, not just stones.
Archaeologist Dr. Amit Raem told CBN News the figurines are found in all Jerusalem excavations from the 7th and 8th century BC. They're seen as an enigma because while the bodies are made by hand, a mold was used for the faces.
Using mold, it means that the face was important. You could play with the body, you could make it by hand, shape it by hand, but the head must be very, very accurate.
They turned to Deborah Ben-Ami, curator of Iron Age and Persian period at the National Treasures of the Israel Antiquities Authority to see how it would have been made.
You have here the mold, pottery made, and then you see here the face inside. We used a plaster to recreate what the figurine looks like. So we put here the material, and then we have the modern impression of the face.
She showed us various pieces and a full female figurine found in an excavation at the Lachish site. While there are theories about how the figurines were used, no one knows for sure.
At the beginning of this research, they will start thinking that this is a main goddess, maybe Asherah, maybe Ashtoret, then a lot of a fertility goddess, even a toy. Today, we are more in the way thinking about a blessing image, a kind of mediator.
Israel's Minister of Heritage, Rabbi Amichai Eliyahu, made this statement about the discovery. According to the sages, the First Temple was destroyed because of three principal sins: idolatry, sexual immorality, and bloodshed. The discovery of a mold for producing figurines from the First Temple period in the heart of Jerusalem offers us a tangible glimpse into the world in which the prophets of Israel lived and into the spiritual and cultural realities they confronted.
This is the Kishle. When they first started excavating here more than 25 years ago, they had no idea what kind of treasures they'd find from the Second and even the First Temple periods.
I wanted to build an education wing right here. But then the archaeologists came and said, listen, we are the first to check what's going on here before your plans, before everything, because this is ancient Jerusalem.
Kishle is a Turkish word from the Ottoman era, meaning winter shelter. When the excavation began there, a former British jail, built near Jaffa Gate in the 1930s, was on top of everything. Archaeologists dug through the period of the Crusaders, foundations of King Herod's first-century private palace, and back to the First Temple time. Now that they have reached bedrock, the excavation is winding down.
It contains all the layers and levels from the history of Jerusalem. It's like a microcosm of the history of the city.
Elat Lieber, director and chief curator of the Tower of David Jerusalem Museum, says they are moving ahead with the new Schulich Wing for Archaeology, Art, and Innovation. After the excavation, the antiquities will be displayed using artifacts, projection technology, and models to tell the story of those who made history in Jerusalem.
We want people to enter this beautiful, beautiful architecture, to be amazed by the building, but more than this, to discover the antiquities.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Tower of David Jerusalem Museum, Jerusalem's Old City.
Well, Joshua, almost every day we find new discoveries in the city of Jerusalem or around Israel. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us.
And remember to follow Jerusalem Dateline on social media, and please keep praying for wisdom for our leaders, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Pray also for the protection of Israel and for the peace of Jerusalem. I'm Chris Mitchell. For all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau, we'll see you next time, next Tuesday on Jerusalem Dateline.